everyone. My name is Meredith Olinger, and I'm an artist, a designer, and an educator. And I'm going to just kind of be walking you through my work and what it is that I do and how I got to where I am. So, as I said, I'm an artist, a designer, and an educator. I work in a lot of different mediums, but I make two-dimensional art. I work in textiles, and I also teach. Um, I teach community education and also on the college level. I'm a mixed media artist, so I work in a lot of different with a lot of different materials. I work in painting, drawing, printmaking, collage, textiles, fashion, and design. And this is kind of a messy image of my studio. So my process is I work with wallpaper that I design myself. I create them digitally, but I also make them by hand. And then I collage them onto a surface and then I rip away at them. I'm looking for something that's really bold, very bombastic, kind of overwhelming. So I generally work in a very large scale. This piece is actually 12 feet long on one side, 8 feet long in the middle, and then 12 feet long on the other. I'm looking to create a space, something that you can walk into and really experience. So I'm going to start kind of talking about how, my earlier work and how I got to where I am now. So when I graduated from the University of Memphis, I graduated in 2012. I was making work kind of like this, abstract, working with the landscape, but also pulling from advertisement. I started working, this is kind of when I started working in mixed media, and you can see there's some, over in here, there is some newspaper underneath. So I was pulling ads, just from trash, basically, collaging them into my work, and then painting on top of them. And this is another image. This was from my senior thesis show, my BFA show. Again, working with advertisements here, you can see coupons and then painting kind of abstract, um, you know, uh, and inspired by the landscape and plants and vegetation, things like that. So I got out of college and I was, like a lot of people, I was kind of trying to find myself a little bit. I worked a lot of different jobs. I worked as a design consultant. I worked in a bakery. I worked. I worked at a museum. I kind of did a lot of different things because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But this entire time, I was making work. I was making art, not as consistently as I had been, but I did continue to make art. These two pieces were made in 2013, and it was kind of a natural progression from what I had been working on. So I had been looking at ads. I started looking at billboards and painting from images of billboards that had kind of been um, collaged over and over again and had been ripped away, and you get left behind with like multiple um, pieces from different advertisements. So I was looking at those and painting them and abstracting them. So in 2014, I got an email just from the Urban Art Commission. They were sending out opportunities for artists, and there was something listed called the Curb Couture Trashion Show. And this was in 2014. And I immediately was like, I have to do this. This sounds really exciting. So the concept is that you take materials, trash basically, and recycle them into a garment. So I had not done I was always interested in fashion. I did a lot of designing and illustration, but I had never actually constructed anything. But I was really excited by this process, so I decided to make a dress completely out of newspaper. Again, kind of pulling from what I had been collaging with in my mixed media work. So I took that same, that same material, and I twisted it into twine. And you can see here on the left, this is a detail shot. So I've twisted the newspaper into twine, and then I wove it together to create this garment. And I immediately fell in love with this process. It really struck me as something, that I was really interested in. Um, and I loved the kind of meditative aspect of it. It was very slow. I could kind of sit and kind of think and be with myself and just kind of weave or make twine. And also, the reaction I got from this piece was really strong. People were really just kind of almost like in awe of this process, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And at a time when I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I kind of realized, okay, I really want to make art. This is the direction I want to go in. So that same year, I decided to apply to Memphis Fashion Week. Um, and I was pretty bold. I decided to do a mini collection. I did 3 looks, and these were made out of a combination of newspaper, other twines and yarns, and then sewn into fabric. Again, I loved this process. It was such a thrill to see my work go down a runway, to see my work on a body. I had never worked in anything 3-dimensional before. I had always worked 2-dimensional. So this was a whole new experience for me. And again, it really, really directed me that it was time to focus on making art and fashion and producing things. So in 2015, I decided to go to graduate school. So I started at Memphis College of Art in the fall of 2015. And I went in making work similar to what I had been doing in the fashion projects. So I was making sculpture, and I was making it completely out of twine from newspaper. Again, I loved this process. I was really invested in it, but it was very slow. And the more I worked in this way, the more I was like, this is moving very slowly. I didn't really see a way forward with it. I just kind of hit the end of this road. I was also having a lot of hand pain because this process is very laborious. So my hands really started bothering me, and I was like, I don't know if I can keep this up. I don't know if this is the best way forward for me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to leave this behind. I'm going to apply to Memphis Fashion Week for 2016. I'm going to really push myself. I'm going to do 5 looks. So I put together 5 looks that were it was very different from what I've been doing, very colorful. I started focusing on, I made handmade beads. Up here you can see all these beads were made by hand. All my fabrics were painted by hand. All of this twine was woven. So I was really pushing myself and thinking about textiles in an interesting way. And so these are some of the garments here. This was all hand beaded, and then the beads were made by hand. This again, this was woven, and then I hand painted this fabric, and then this piece here, this was hand painted, and this was hand painted as well. So it was a very different collection than what I had done the year before, but I really liked the kind of exuberance of it. It was joyful, it was fun to look at, it was colorful. It was much more in line with me and my personality and what I was interested in. So out of this process came this pattern, and you'll see it here. Here in here and in the dress here. So I started making patterns based on, just my own drawings or prints or things that I had done. And I really fell in love with this process. So this is one of the patterns that I made that I used for Memphis Fashion Week. This is a pattern that I created for, and this is a little later on. I just kind of want to show you some of my pattern work. This was a pattern that I made for a mural that I did, which I'll show you in a bit. This was a pattern that I made based on a painting from my earlier work. So I took a photograph of a painting and I put it into I just mirrored it basically. And so I was able to take something old that didn't feel as relevant to me anymore and make it new. Again, this was some block printing that I did, and I just mirrored it and turned it into a pattern. And then another, this was actually I did an application for a mural um, that got rejected, but I put a lot of work into it and I was really pleased with it. So I just turned it into a pattern. So I started working with patterns and I realized that everything I had done, all the things I was interested in, could go into this type of work. Again, I was working with, you know, murals that didn't get chosen. I was working with old paintings. I made prints, I made patterns out of to-do lists, things, little doodles that I had around. Anything and everything I was making a pattern out of. And that's when I started getting these patterns printed onto wallpaper. So this was a huge breakthrough for me, and this was in 2016. So I started printing these patterns onto wallpaper, and I get it printed through Spoonflower. They make a really beautiful product. It is a little expensive, but I've been working with them for I guess 4 or 5 years now. But I started printing using Spoonflower, and then I was also making it by hand. So in here you can see these this Hosta pattern. This is done digitally. Here, this is done by hand. This over here is done digitally. So I was really playing with this idea of digital versus handmade. And again, going back to my interest in billboards, I was using them as a reference, the kind of tearing and collaging. Again, another large piece that I did. I also had always really wanted to work big. I like working on a large scale. I just really respond to it visually. And I think that it feels natural for my body to work large and not small. I get kind of hung up on the kind of small pieces. They go too quickly. I need something big that I can really sink my teeth into. And this was my thesis piece that I put together. So the idea was that it would be freestanding. It wouldn't be a wall. It would be a space you could walk into. So I had these walls constructed for me, actually, and then I put the panels onto the front. So it's broken up actually into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 freestanding walls that could then be reconfigured in a bunch of different ways. So I was really pleased with this piece. I was happy with the way it came together. And it really felt like, I went to grad school to kind of find myself in a way and find what it is, the type of work that I really wanted to make. And I came out really feeling like I had really hit it. And here's just the left-hand side and the right-hand side of that piece. And again, so with the walls, I found I could reconfigure them. I could move them around. So I rearranged the panels and I did this piece where there's art on the front and on the back. So, this way of working really offered me a lot of freedom, which is something I was really looking for. So I got out of grad school and then I started working. I started applying to shows and murals and teaching jobs and things like that. And this was a mural that I did in downtown Memphis. It was a short-term mural. And I made all of these patterns specifically for this project. That's where the pigs came from earlier. You can see them in here. All of these were Memphis-based patterns that I did. So you can see the 901 in here, 901 down in here. I did the pyramid. I did dogwoods, just things that were relevant to this area. And then I turned that into a mural piece. And this is 8 feet by 8 feet. So then also in 2018, I had always kind of been working with the color of the year. I'm very interested in companies predicting, what color is going to be in or out. I think that's just such an interesting process to me. So I every year I make a new pattern based on what Pantone decides is the color of the year. And in 2018, it was ultraviolet, which was a very intense purple that I wasn't super excited about. Um, but it was a real challenge for me. And actually, this piece was created in conjunction with Pantone. They put an exhibition on to show off their color of the year, and this piece was made for that exhibition, which was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So also in 2018, fashion had always kind of pushed my work forward. It wasn't something I was very interested in selling or producing, mass producing. But I loved creating something to go on the body. I love to see my work walk down a runway. It's such a thrill, as I'm sure a lot of you know, um, to see a model in your clothing. So I decided for 2018 that I would apply to Memphis Fashion Week again. And so this was a way for me to kind of play with some of my pattern making again, to also play with this idea of digital versus handmade, which I did with this collection. So these are the pieces that I made for that show. So this pattern in the center here, this kind of kimono, this is digitally printed, but it's made from a block print that I did myself. And then over here on the right, you see it's the same kind of motif, but it's done by hand. Also on the left, I did this by hand as well. So I wanted to play with that, with scale, and with handmade versus digital, kind of tricking the viewer in a way. I also had a lot of fun creating these ties. These were kind of wrapped, almost like hair wraps, just embroidery floss wrapped around a cord to create this kind of interesting belt. So that was really fun, and that was a really great experience for me. So at the end of 2018, I had done a lot since I got out of grad school. I was in a lot of shows. I was pushing myself really, really hard, and I was making work for shows, which is not necessarily the best way to do it. I think sometimes it's better to make the work and then apply to the show. So I kind of needed a break. So I applied to a residency in upstate New York. That it was a month-long residency where they would give me a place to live and a studio space, and I could basically do whatever I wanted. So I presented a project that I would basically do nothing but paint. I would paint for a whole month. I wouldn't bring any collage material. I would just bring paint, and I would paint, which I had not done really in 4 or 5 years. I had been working in textiles, I'd been working in collage, and I'd really gotten out of the practice of painting. So I went up there, and it was the best thing in the world. And if you ever get an opportunity to take a residency, to take a break and really focus on your work like that, I highly encourage you to do it, because it was just a great time for me to dig into painting again. So I only made like 3 paintings. This one, and this one. I made a lot of smaller work, a lot of studies and things, but I came out with these 3 large pieces that I was very pleased with, and it also kind of moved my practice in a new direction. Or not new, but just kind of moved it forward a little bit. So when I came back, obviously I was painting. This was a piece that I made, I guess in 2019. I also, because I had gotten familiar with painting again and almost kind of relearned how to do it, I started doing painting and collage together. And these are 2 pieces that came out of that. These are also from 2019. So this is some more recent work. Again, painting and collage together. I also started really doing printmaking at this time. I was teaching at Memphis College of Art in their community ed program, and they needed someone to teach printmaking. And it wasn't something I was super familiar with, but I was like, sure, I'll do it. They didn't really have anyone else to do it, so I kind of taught myself how to how to screen print and things. I've been doing some block printing and things, but not screen printing. So these are some of the pieces that came out of that. So, and I don't know how familiar you are with the process of screen printing, but for a lot of people, you're making multiples of um, one image. And I didn't want to think about it in those terms. I wanted to make original pieces of art with using layers and layers of screen printing. So I started working in this way, which has been a really, really fun process for me, and it's become almost a whole separate aspect of my work. But it does work its way into my large scale pieces. I also make patterns out of these and things like that. But these are based on my patterns. Everything revolves around the pattern for me. So I'm constantly making new ones, but I don't throw the old ones out. They work their way into my pieces all the time. And this was an installation I did of this printmaking work. So I guess I did about 60 prints. This was also in 2019 or 2020, I can't remember. That I did. I had a solo show at Stock and Bell, and I did a huge installation of my printmaking work. And this was really, really fun to take something small, relatively small. These are like 24 by 36 kind of poster size, and make it into something larger, which is, again, what I'm always interested in. A large scale piece, something that, kind of dwarfs the viewer, that they can be almost wrapped up in. So that's kind of how I got here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So thank you for listening to my talk. And yeah, I'd love to hear any questions that you have.